How's it going, everyone? So in this video, we're going to focus on taking a look at the possibility of when we could see our first snowstorm in the Northeast and the Midwest, because now we're approaching that time. Winter is right around the corner, and I'm sure many of you guys who've been watching along my winter season forecast videos have been wondering when could we see our next major snowstorm over the next few weeks. So if we were to take a look at the short-term computer models forecasts as of right now, taking a look first at the GFS model, there isn't really much to look forward to when it comes to snowfall. And as you could see, mainly because we just been seeing this very strong persistent ridge hover right over the eastern United States that's been preventing a lot of the cold air from being able to seep in and bring that potential of snowstorm. And not only just cold air, but precipitation in general, which is the reason why in many areas along the eastern United States, it hasn't rained in over a month, and it could last even into next week, because we do have several troughs moving through the United States. But again, it's going to take a track that's going to just miss a lot of areas in the Northeast and the East Coast, which will further exacerbate the drought conditions, as well as, of course, reduce the chance of snowfall, at least within the next week. We do have this one trough moving northward, but again, there's just too strong of ridging right over the eastern United States, and too strong of a southerly flow to allow the cold air for any sort of snowfall to occur. Now, we do have this trough that's expected to move in right around the November 5th timeframe, just off the Pacific Northwest coast, and it does bring a decent amount of cold air with it. However, it's eventually expected to cut off from the jet stream, and we do see some snowfall occur in the higher elevations of Colorado and New Mexico. But this storm system is expected to be relatively weak, and again, its cold air will be kept at a minimum, because this will transition into an upper level low where the jet stream will sort of cut off from this low pressure system, which will reduce the amount of cold air that could be supplied, because all the cold air is just north of the jet stream, and the jet stream is going to be well to the north of this upper level low. So of course that reduces the chance of any major snowfall occurring, not only because there isn't enough cold air, but just because there isn't going to be enough instability with an upper level low like this with a limited amount of cold air. So we won't really see a powerful storm system either, where we primarily see a rain event right over the Midwest, despite the fact that the higher elevations of the Pacific Northwest and the Rocky Mountains would receive snowfall. Now, how about beyond that? So at this point, we're approaching that forecast time frame where, of course, we begin to see a high level of uncertainty beyond the 7-day mark, and we do see another trough that is expecting to move in right around the November 10th to November 11th time frame, again bringing heavy snowfall and precipitation throughout the west coast of the United States. And we do have a small possibility of a snowstorm in this scenario, but again, it's way too far out to say. And then we do eventually see a major snowstorm move into the northern Midwest with its millibar pressure hovering right around 970. So it is a powerful storm system as well, but I'm going over 300 hours out, so this is almost a guess at this point from the GFS model. I definitely take this with a grain of salt and not really take it into consideration at all just yet. Way too far out. But pretty much to summarize what the computer models are showing, and same goes for the European model, is that there's just this ridge is just going to be too strong, because like I showed you with all these troughs, look at the trajectory they're taking. They're moving well to the north well before it reaches the Northeast and the Great Lakes region. So of course the southerly winds will be too strong in a lot of these instances for any sort of snowfall and precipitation to occur, at least within the foreseeable future, within the next 1 to 2 weeks. And the European model is also agreeing on the same thing. Taking a quick look at that, the European model is taking the troughs to the north, like the GFS model, and just a very low chance of snowfall. So I could say that if you're hoping for snowfall, I'd say within the next 2 weeks in a lot of these areas of the Great Lakes region and the Northeast, it's going to be highly unlikely, thanks to how strong this ridge is and how strong of a southerly flow we're seeing throughout the eastern United States. So since it's looking pretty clear that within the next 2 weeks, the chance of a major snowstorm occurring in Northeast and the Northern Midwest is fairly unlikely, we need to take a look at the more long-term computer model outlooks to really determine what type of pattern we'll see and see if there could be a more better conditions when it comes to the possibility of a snowstorm. And if we were to take a look at the CFS model, unfortunately for those hoping for snowfall in a lot of these areas, the CFS model isn't really budging much either, as it expects conditions to stay warmer than average for the most part throughout the Northeast as well as the Midwest and pretty much the entirety, I'd say, of the eastern United States in general. And the CFS model is forecasting this up until the week ending of December 15th. So if this trend continues, then we very well might not see our first major snowstorm, at least for a while, especially towards the November and early December timeframe, as it seems like this ridge is just very strong, and it's part of the reason why we're seeing drought-like conditions over the Northeast, which isn't a surprise why the CFS model is leaning towards that direction of bringing a strong amount of ridging and a high amount of dry air right over the eastern United States. So I'll say as of right now, at least for the next month potentially, it's looking less likely we're going to receive a major snowstorm for the northern Midwest as well as Northeast. However, take it with a grain of salt, because of course this is a very long-term climatological model, so a lot could change between now and a month from now. And also, even if the temperatures might be above average for a week that's forecasted a month away, there could be that one specific day where you receive below average temperatures within that week that could still bring that possibility of a major snowstorm, despite the fact that the week in general is overall bringing you above average temperatures. So there's still that possibility, no matter what the computer models say, of a major snowstorm. It's just looking less likely based on the trends we're seeing and the average temperatures we're expected to see by the time we approach all the way up until mid-December. And like I said, the current drought conditions we're seeing throughout the United States won't help with this either, because not only will a drought, of course, obviously bring drier than normal conditions, that's what a drought is, but also associated with the drought is that the surface heats up a lot more quickly, since there isn't really water that will be able to sort of take the shortwave radiation from the sun, from the sun's energy away, and really help cool down the atmosphere and the surface. So as a result, we're more likely to see the temperatures warmer than average during drought-like conditions as well. And based on what I showed you with the European and the GFS models just now, as well as CFS model, it seems like this ridge is going to be very persistent over the next few weeks, which makes me believe that the drought conditions will only worsen in a lot of these areas, especially in the eastern United States. And I think that will contribute to your first snowstorm being a little bit later than usual this winter season for many of these areas. The North Atlantic Oscillation also supports this idea, where the current forecast from many of the most reliable computer models is that we're going to be in a positive North Atlantic Oscillation phase for the most part up until maybe the early January timeframe. And what a positive North Atlantic Oscillation consists of is a stronger amount of jet stream winds, which prevents the polar vortex, which is a large area of cold air in right around the North Pole regions, to be able to meander further southward, because the jet stream winds are so strong that's able to trap a lot of that cold air in the polar regions. However, during a negative phase, that's when the jet stream winds are weak, which allows the cold air to have more of a possibility of meandering further southward and bringing those colder and snowy than normal conditions to the Northeast and the Midwest, while also, of course, enhancing the possibility of a major snowstorm happening in those areas. And as you can see, for the next few weeks, and even potentially as long as the next 2 months, we're going to be in a positive North Atlantic Oscillation phase, which certainly isn't very good news for snow lovers out there, as this definitely won't will reduce the chance you'll receive snowfall over the next few weeks. But like I said, there could be that one anomalous day where it could be well below average and we do see a snowstorm, despite the fact that maybe over the next few weeks the temperatures could be above average. I will rule out that possibility as well. So that's maybe some hope you can maybe lean on if you're hoping for snowfall in the Northeast and the Northern Midwest, or the thing that you might be concerned about if you don't want the snowfall in those same areas. But at this point, I think it's more likely we're not going to see a major snowstorm within the next few weeks in a lot of these areas. Another thing that I believe will contribute to the less likely chance of a major snowstorm happening within the foreseeable future is the fact that during La Nina years, the amount of polar vortexes reduce less than average during the month of December. We see it's a different story when we take a look at January and February. So in a lot of these areas, let's say if this drought trend continues for the Northeast and the Midwest, we might not maybe see our first major snowstorm in some of these areas up until January. But for the month of December, we do see that the red is El Nino years, the blue is La Nina years. We see that during the La Nina year, El Nino years, the amount of polar vortexes is definitely higher than what we see during La Nina years. And since we're going to be in a La Nina most likely by the time we approach next month, I believe that will contribute to the conditions being a little bit more difficult for a major snowstorm to occur, at least during the early part of the winter time frame. However, there could be a silver lining for those hoping for snow in the Northeast and the Midwest, and that's taking a look at an analog year. And what an analog year is a year that has conditions that are very similar to what we're experiencing right now. And the winter that does show a similarity to what we've experienced so far is the winter of 1981 or 1982, or should I say the fall of 1981 approaching the winter of 1981 and 1982, because the two things that this year the one thing that this year and the fall season of 1981 had in common is that we saw a record-breaking weak polar vortex during the month of October, and as you can see during the what happened the rest of the year of the winter of 1981 and headed into 1982 is that we saw another record-breaking weak polar vortex right around the early December timeframe, which of course did promote a lot more cooler as well as snowy than normal conditions during the month of December. Now, of course, this is only one year that's very similar to this year, and every year is very different. I'm sure that the 1981 year didn't have a drought that's this severe like what we're experiencing right now. So, of course, there are differences, but it's still at least something to take into consideration. The fact that the 1981 season did bring a record-breaking weak polar vortex during the month of October, which could potentially lead to a higher possibility of a record-breaking weak polar vortex happening by the month of December. Right now, I'd still lean to it being warmer and drier than normal during early December, thanks to what the computer models are stating at this point and the fact that we're currently in a drought, which would promote those conditions happening up until December, because droughts don't go away very quickly, and also due to the fact that weaker polar vortexes are less likely to happen during La Nina years compared to El Nino years, and we're in a La Nina year this season. So I'd still lean to the idea it will be warmer and drier than average, but there could be that silver lining that, hey, maybe the 1981 year could have some validity in it when it comes to what happens after we see a record-breaking weak polar vortex during the month of October. So definitely take this into consideration as well, as I definitely wouldn't rule it out for maybe us seeing a weak polar vortex by early December, but I'll still say it's less likely compared to what the computer models as well as what we're seeing right now are stating at this time. So the big question you're asking is, when could our first snowstorm happen? And you kind of already got the idea throughout the video. I think that it's, unfortunately for those snow lovers out there, it's going to be fairly relatively late that you're going to receive your first snowstorm. I'll say I don't see a good possibility of that happening, especially during the November timeframe. I wouldn't say until maybe mid to late December, once we begin to really approach the heart of the winter time frame, where the temperatures really begin to get cold. By the time we approach January, we could see our first opportunity of a major snowstorm for the Northeast and the Great Lakes, because the conditions just aren't conducive right now, like I've been saying, with these drought conditions and what the computer models have been stating. So it could be a while before we see our first major snowstorm in a lot of these areas. But again, weather is unpredictable. Take it with a grain of salt, and I'll keep you guys updated if there's any opportunity, at least within the near future, of a major snowstorm, because like I said, weather is very unpredictable. So stay tuned for more updates regarding the possibility you could receive more your first snowstorm in the near future. But that's it if it does happen. But that's it for now, guys, and I thank you guys for watching.